The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was for a wedding reception. Not silent, there was music somewhere, the polite clink of glasses, but it felt muted. Like the air in that chandelier-lit hall was holding its breath. I didn't belong here, and everyone knew it. My son, Liam, had begged me to come. "Just for a little while, Dad," he'd said, practicing his ring-bearer walk in the living room, sunglasses too big for his 8-year-old face. I told myself I was here for him, nothing else. Not for her. Not for the man standing at the head table, in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my truck. The hall was too warm. Gold drapes framed the windows, polished floors reflected the light in cold, perfect lines. Every table looked like it had been pulled from a wedding magazine, every guest dressed like they'd stepped out of an ad. I kept to the shadows along the far wall, hands in my pockets, eyes on Liam as he moved between the guests like a miniature agent on a mission. That's when the first laugh came. It started soft, then grew, drawn out, deliberate. I turned, and there they were, the groom's brother, a few cousins, and a man I recognized as her uncle. They moved in close, a half-circle cutting me off from the rest of the room. "You got lost, buddy?" the brother said. His breath smelled of whiskey. "I'm here for my son," I replied, keeping my voice flat. One of them smirked, tilting his glass toward the head table. "She's moved on to a real man, you know." The others laughed, not the kind you share with friends, but the kind that wants to draw blood. My pulse quickened, but I didn't take the bait. If there was one thing the divorce had taught me, it was the power of silence. Then, pressure at my sleeve. Small fingers, urgent. "Liam." His eyes were wide, darting past the group towards something I couldn't see. His voice was barely a whisper. "Dad, we need to go. Now." My stomach tightened. "What's wrong?" He shook his head, swallowing hard. "Something bad's about to happen. Please trust me." For a moment, I searched his face. This wasn't the usual child's fear of crowds or strangers. There was a certainty in his voice that cut through the warmth of the room like ice. I nodded once, taking his hand. Without another word, we stepped around the men and began moving toward the exit. The air seemed heavier with every step, the music behind us fading into a single high note in my ears. We were 10 feet from the doors when it happened. A sound, not a crash yet, but a sharp, violent crack. Gasps rippled through the room. I turned, and saw it, the chandelier above the main table shivering in its chains, light scattering wildly off 1,000 pieces of crystal, moments from letting go. The chandelier didn't fall all at once. It groaned first, metal under strain, a noise that sliced through the polite chatter and laughter like a warning no one wanted to hear. Heads turned. Champagne flutes paused midair. For a heartbeat, the whole room hung in limbo. Then came the second sound. A deep, tearing crack, followed by a rain of glass so fine it looked like glitter in the light. The massive fixture swayed once, twice, and then gravity took it. The crash was deafening. Crystal exploded against the marble floor in a spray of silver and light. Plates shattered. Screams overlapped. Someone yelled for everyone to get down. The head table disappeared in a blizzard of debris. I froze for half a second, long enough to see the groom lurch backward, clutching his arm, his immaculate white jacket now streaked in red. My ex-wife was on the ground beside him, tangled in the wreckage, hair matted with glass, eyes wild. Liam gripped my hand so tight my fingers went numb. "See, Dad?" he said, his voice trembling but certain. "I told you." That certainty twisted in my chest. I scooped him up, cradling his head against my shoulder, and pushed through the chaos toward the doors. The smell of scorched wiring mingled with perfume and spilled champagne. A security guard brushed past us, radio blaring. Outside, the night air hit cold and sharp. My breath came fast, not from running, but from the knowledge already forming in the pit of my stomach. Liam hadn't guessed something bad would happen. He'd known. I set him down on the pavement. His cheeks were pale, eyes darting toward the building as shouts and sirens grew behind the glass. "Liam," I said, crouching to meet his gaze. "How did you know?" He bit his lip, that small habit of his when he wanted to tell the truth but didn't know if he should. I heard them last night, he whispered. My chest tightened. Heard who? Mom. Her new husband. And a man I've never seen before. He glanced at the doors, lowering his voice further. They were in the kitchen. I couldn't sleep, so I went to get water. They were saying it would be poetic if you got hurt here. And Mom's husband said, if he's not in the right spot, maybe someone else will. The words landed heavy, sharp as broken glass. You're sure about this? I asked. He nodded, quick and desperate. In that moment, any lingering doubt about the chandelier being an accident burned away. They hadn't just wanted to humiliate me. They'd wanted to leave me broken, or worse, under the ruins of that glittering monster. I pulled him close, my decision crystallizing in the cold air. Okay, buddy. You did the right thing. I murmured. Now it's my turn. And I knew this wasn't going to be about calling the police. This was going to be about ending them. We stood in the glow of the reception hall's lights, the glass doors behind us reflecting flashing red and blue from approaching sirens. Liam's hand was still in mine, small and warm, but I could feel the faint tremor in his fingers. Inside, chaos reigned, guests shouting, security corralling people away from the wreckage, waiters clutching their trays like shields. Through the glass, I caught a glimpse of her, my ex-wife, limping, one hand gripping the groom's arm. Even at this distance, her expression wasn't fear. It was fury. Not at the chandelier. At me. I knew that look. I'd seen it in court when she didn't get what she wanted. I'd seen it the night she walked out, her words sharp enough to leave marks. She was already calculating her next move, already rewriting the story in her favor. The smart play, the safe play, would have been to walk Liam straight to the nearest police station. To hand over his statement, let them comb through the wreckage, and wait for justice to limp along at its usual pace. But as I watched her, something in me shifted. The truth was simple: people like her, like him, didn't lose because someone proved them wrong. They lost because their own world turned on them. And I knew exactly how to make that happen. I crouched so I was eye level with Liam. You're going to stay with Aunt Clara for a while, I told him. Just until things settle. His brow furrowed. Are you in trouble? No, I said and meant it. But they are. A cold wind lifted his hair, and for a second, he looked older, more serious, than any 8-year-old should. He nodded once, like he understood more than I was saying. Minutes later, I had him buckled into Clara's car, her worried eyes flicking from him to me. What are you going to do? She asked. Handle it, I said. And then I turned back toward the reception hall, not to go in, but to watch. From the sidewalk across the street, I saw the groom pacing, his phone pressed to his ear. He wasn't calling for help. His gestures were too sharp, too practiced. Nearby, a man in a black suit stood with his back to the wall, scanning the crowd with the steady, alert posture of someone who had been paid to be here. I didn't need to hear the words to know they were already spinning this. By morning, I'd be the uninvited guest who caused the scene. The chandelier would be a tragic accident. My son's warning would be nothing but the frightened imagination of a child. Unless I acted first. In that moment, the decision solidified into something unshakable. This wouldn't be a defense. It would be an attack. Quiet. Precise. The kind of thing that, once set in motion, couldn't be stopped. And when it was over, they wouldn't just be exposed. They'd be destroyed. By the time I got back to my apartment, the adrenaline had faded, leaving something colder behind. Not fear. Not even anger. Focus. I shut the door, pulled my phone from my pocket, and scrolled to a name I hadn't used in years: Marcus. Former military. Now private security. The kind of man who could dig through locked drawers without ever setting foot in a room. When he picked up, his voice was low, gravelly. Been a while. I need a quiet job, I said. A pause. Legal? Not even close. Another pause. Then a faint chuckle. Send me the names. The next 3 days blurred into a series of small, deliberate moves. I stayed invisible. No calls to mutual friends. No posts online. No sign that I'd heard anything from Liam. If they thought I was scared, humiliated, licking my wounds somewhere, that was good. People drop their guard when they think you've folded. Marcus worked in the shadows. By the 4th night, he called with a voice full of dark amusement. Your ex's new husband? He said. Drowning in gambling debt. The kind you don't get out of without breaking the law. He didn't stop there. Offshore accounts in her name. Wire transfers to a washed-up stunt rigger with a criminal record long enough to be a novella. And the payment? Pulled straight from the groom's company, a government contractor with a zero-tolerance policy for scandal. That was the thread I'd been waiting for. Pull it, and the whole fabric would come apart. But knowing wasn't enough. I needed them to turn on each other. That meant bait. I printed out every scrap of Marcus's findings, wire transfer screenshots, casino surveillance stills, even an invoice for lighting adjustments from the chandelier rigger. I slid them into a manila envelope and sent it to the company's compliance department, marked urgent. Next came the message to her. A burner phone. One photo, her Cayman account balance page. Beneath it, I typed, I know everything. You'll be hearing from them soon. I could picture her reading it, shoulders tensing, mouth going tight, eyes flicking toward her husband and wondering what he told me. The last piece was the rigger himself. Marcus set up a chance meeting between him and one of the groom's biggest rivals, a man with just enough money and spite to make trouble. A small cash promise of immunity, and the rigger was suddenly eager to talk. By the end of the week, local reporters were sniffing around. And when the wedding video, complete with the chandelier crash, hit social media, it was only a matter of time before the story grew teeth. All I had to do now was wait for the first bite. But that was the problem with waiting. It gave me too much time to think about what could happen if I lost. About Liam, sitting in his room at Clara's, probably wondering why I hadn't called. The stakes weren't money. They weren't even revenge anymore. They were him. And if this failed, I knew exactly who they'd come after next. The call came at 2:14 a.m. Not from Marcus. Not from anyone I expected. It was her. Her voice was sharp, frayed, and trembling at the edges. You think you're clever? I didn't answer. I wanted her to fill the silence. They're freezing the accounts. His company, they've suspended him. Reporters are outside my house. Liam's. Her voice caught. That pause was my knife in the dark. You dragged him into this, I said. You did this to yourself. Not alone, I said. And you know it. For a moment, all I could hear was her breath, short, ragged, like she was drowning in a room with air. Then a click. By dawn, the story was everywhere. Government contractor faces corruption probe. Senior engineer accused of funneling illicit payments offshore. And there it was in print, the bride's name, linked directly to the Cayman account. I drove to Clara's. Liam was in the yard, sitting cross-legged on the grass, a small bag by his side. He looked up at me with a face that hadn't slept. They came by, he said. 2 men. Asked questions. Clara told them to leave. But they knew my name. I knelt in front of him. Did they hurt you? No. But it's not over, is it? Before I could answer, a black SUV rolled up at the curb. Doors opened. Not police, private muscle. The kind you hire when you can't call the law. They moved fast. One headed straight for Liam. I stepped in his path, and for a second, time slowed. I could see Marcus's car half a block away, his hand already on the door. The man in front of me had a baton at his side. His jaw flexed like he'd already decided what I was worth. I didn't give him the choice. My fist connected with his throat before he could speak, his body folding with a sound like air leaving a tire. Marcus was there in 3 strides, hauling Liam toward the car. The second man shouted, reaching into his coat, but I was already moving, grabbing his wrist, twisting until I heard the sharp pop of bone. His scream cut through the morning like glass. By the time the SUV peeled away, Marcus had Liam in the passenger seat and the engine running. I climbed in the back, blood pounding in my ears. "They'll come harder next time," Marcus said. "Let them," I said. But in that moment, as Liam's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror, I knew this wasn't about letting them come. It was about ending it, once and for all. We didn't go home. Home didn't exist anymore. Marcus drove until the city disappeared in the mirrors and the road turned into something without signs or promises. Liam leaned against the passenger window, silent, eyes fixed on the shifting blur of trees and light. No one spoke for hours. It was the kind of silence that isn't awkward, it's survival. Every word feels like it could break the fragile glass we're carrying inside. We stopped at a small roadside motel. The kind that smelled faintly of bleach and rain, where the keys were still made of metal and the reception clerk didn't look too closely. Marcus got us 2 rooms. He gave me 1 key, then left without a word to find food. Liam followed me inside. He didn't sit. He didn't ask questions. He just stood there until I finally said, "You're safe now." He shook his head. "Safe isn't real, is it?" I didn't have an answer. Later, while he slept in the bed nearest the door, I sat in the dark with my back against the wall, listening for footsteps that never came. The hum of the neon sign outside the window pulsed like a heartbeat. Somewhere far away, a train horn sounded, long and low, like it knew where it was going. When morning came, I left before either of them woke. The sun was just lifting over the horizon, stretching pale gold fingers across the cracked asphalt. My bag was light, just cash, clothes, and the single folder that started all this. The folder I hadn't told Marcus about. Inside were copies of every transfer, every falsified contract, every signature that tied them together like threads in a noose. I left it on the motel's front desk with a note. "When the time comes, give this to the police." I walked away before the clerk could ask anything. By the time Marcus realized I was gone, I'd be miles from there. By the time they traced me, the story would already be moving, out of my hands, into the light. And maybe, just maybe, that light would be enough to burn the last of them out of our lives. At the edge of the highway, I stood with my thumb out. A rusted pickup slowed, the driver giving me a look that said he didn't care who I was or where I was going. I climbed in without asking his name. As the truck pulled away, the wind tore at my hair, carrying with it the faint scent of salt from some unseen ocean. For the first time in months, I let myself breathe all the way in. It didn't feel like victory. It didn't feel like peace. It felt like the quiet after a storm, when the ground is still wet, the air still heavy, and you know the damage will take years to fade, but at least the worst has passed. And for now, that was enough.